Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today we're going to talk about one of the most fun baits that you can throw that will generate some really good strikes. It'll show you a bunch of fish that live in your lake, and it's just a really fun bait to throw around, and that's a bigger swim bait. When I'm talking bigger, I'm generally talking 6 inches or larger. It could be a line through, could be a treble hook, a top hook, a bottom hook, lots of various types of larger swim baits, but they are such fun baits to toss around. And this is the time of year where they really start to become a major factor. You've got a bunch of bass that are starting to key in on a little bit larger prey. The shad species and the forage species are at their largest point of the growing season, heading into the fall period. And a lot of times fish are just starting to key in on a little bit bigger profiled bait. And that's where your swim baits come into play. So I want to talk about my four favorite swim baits that I throw around. I've got a couple of different types of cover that I like to fish them on. Overall, you could fish these pretty much anywhere, and they're all somewhat replaceable, but there are kind of peak times and places where I like to throw one over another. So we're going to break that down. I also want to remind you guys that if you're looking for a little bit of help from me on your local lakes, you might want to check out to see if I've done a lake breakdown through fishthemoment.com. Provide a bunch of different specific locations that you should fish based on the season for those lakes. So I'll provide the link in my video description, and you can check those out. Also, if you want to support the channel and you're looking for more content from me, check out my members only page as well. All right, so let's talk a little bit about big swim baits. Some of my absolute favorite places to throw them are around isolated pieces of cover. If you're talking docks, docks are excellent places. Lay down trees are excellent places. Isolated grass clumps. If you live up here in the North Country and you want to see some of the biggest smallmouth in your lake, when you're talking about fishing in September, isolated grass clumps on some of your bigger flats are going to be places to catch some giant smallmouth bass. If you're talking spotted bass, your docks, your floating docks are going to be a major player. You can pretty much throw them anywhere, and you don't necessarily have to have a bunch of bait around. I like to have them in areas where I feel like I'm fishing ambush locations, and generally, not that I don't want to have bait around. I don't want to be overrun with tons and tons of bait. I generally like to have, if I'm fishing around bait, just individual bait balls. Sometimes that means they're sitting under the shade pocket of a floating sailboat. Maybe they're sitting under a dock. Just simple places like that. I do feel like I can be a little bit more efficient and productive by fishing other baits if I'm really truly targeting just big balls of bait that are suspended out in the middle part of the lake. Anyways, okay, so let's break down some of these baits. I'm going to talk about this guy first. This is a 316 Rising Sun. I've caught some absolute giant bass on this. This is a bait that has produced a ton of high tournament finishes, big fish in tournaments. It's been around for quite some time. It actually, I think you could almost say that this is one of those baits that has triggered the swim bait craze. An absolute must have, in my opinion. One of the reasons I like it so much is because of the profile on the bait. It's kind of a wider bait from side to side, but it's not as wide from belly to top of bait. And what that means is it's a really good bait for fishing on a big weedless hook like I've got here. So if I'm fishing around a bunch of grass or I'm fishing around lots of laydowns where I can't pull through a treble hook, that's where I really like to grab this guy. It's got a flatter body, and it's also got kind of a hollow midsection, so your hookup percentage is really good. Caught one of the biggest bass of my life on this practicing on Lake Gunnersville. I was fishing some channel swing edges, bringing it along some grass clumps that were right on the edge of that channel. Caught some giant fish. Guys like Matt Airy had some extremely good finishes. I think he actually won one of the Beaver Lake FLW tours fishing this around docks. The thing's got history. It's an absolute must-have, in my opinion. It's the Rising Sun by 316 Mission 316 Bait Company. So that's one of my favorites, and the key, like I said, is it's a really good one for fishing weedless. Now, if I'm looking to fish around docks and I'm looking to skip up and under some of those docks and I don't necessarily need a weedless presentation, that's where I love to go with the Berkeley K Shad. This is the rigged one. You also can get the unrigged version if you'd like. I really do like the rigged version though, based on having the clip on the bottom, it just holds together really good. It's a little bit tougher material, so it skips extremely well and it holds up from a long day of skipping. I've caught some absolute giants on this. You've seen it definitely in a bunch of different tournaments as well. It's had a major impact. This is one of my preferred colors in it, but just the 6-inch rigged shad dynamite bait. And I really do like it for skipping around cover and up and under ducks. Now, if I'm looking just to kind of cover a bunch of water, it's hard not to talk about the Mega Bass Mag Draft. Again, this is the 6-inch version. This is one that I prefer to throw kind of, I don't want to say open water, but more along like riprap banks, maybe bluff walls, places where I feel like I'm just, you know, trying to cover a bunch of water, but I'm also fishing areas where I know there's some good fish. You obviously can skip this around. It is softer in my opinion, so it doesn't hold up as good as the coal shad, but it's got a different movement to it. It's, a lot of these baits have more tail wag. This bait's got kind of more side to side roll, and that just gives it a different presentation. But I really like throwing this just kind of covering more water. If I think I've got fish that are in 6 or 8 foot of water, I can bring this up over the top and it just generates a lot of strikes. I feel like I can fish it just a tad bit deeper as well. Again, it's one that's been very, very proven. Tons of professional tournaments have had extremely high finishes on the mag draft. They come in different sizes. All these tend to come in different sizes. But the 6-inch, right around that 6-inch size, is what I really like. I feel like it's big enough to attract big fish, but it's also small enough to generate a lot of bites from 2 pounders, 2.5, 3 pound class fish, even smaller. You'd be surprised how small a fish you'll catch. But I like to have a bait that's not so big I weed out some of those smaller keeper size fish. Because if you're going to throw a swim bait all day, a lot of times you're not going to generate a ton of strikes. A lot of times you draw a lot of fish out to look at your bait and you can catch them on other baits. But it's one of those things where if I'm going to commit to it, I'm going to throw it all day. I may only get 7 or 8 bites, but I feel like half of those are going to be really good quality fish. The other half are going to be keepers or even smaller than keepers. But that's why it's so important still to generate those strikes. Because if I'm going to commit all day and I'm in a 5 fish derby, I need to put 5 in the boat. If you got 3 good ones and you catch 2 of those other smaller ones that'll hit a 6-inch, but maybe not hit an 8-inch bait or hook up with an 8-inch bait, it's worth it to me to be throwing the 6-inch size. And then the last one I really like is this guy right here. This is the Babe swim bait. I don't know if they still make these or not. I've got a bunch of these. I'm not going to take it out of the top because it's really tough to get back in. But a lot of you guys might recognize this. This is pretty much the old Bass Pro Shops XPS swim bait. I believe it's the same mold. This thing has a cult following. Again, just generates really good bites. This for me is another one of those baits similar to the Mag Draft where I like to throw it more around pieces of cover, but where I know I'm not necessarily going to get stung up or hung up or I need to get up under cover. So your bridge pilings, your riprap banks, your bluff walls, maybe it's a steep contour line break. Maybe it's over the top of a submerged hump or over a top of a big boulder, that type of cover. It just, again, has a different swimming motion, but it's an absolute killer. This thing has a cult following by a ton of professional anglers. Like I said, I don't know if they're still making it. They were making it in batches and they were really difficult to get and they were sold out almost instantly. But it's the Babe swim bait, Rhinolicious, 3F. Fishing for 5 is, I guess, the actual name of them. But again, it's cool. I also really like how it comes in the tube and it hangs the bait, so it keeps the bait in really good condition. You keep from kinking the tail. Just a great personal or custom hand poured soft plastic bait that I believe is using the same mold that the XPS was off of. But these 4 swim baits, guys, if you have these 4 in your arsenal, you're doing just fine. There are lots and lots of other really good ones out there. Some of them can be extremely expensive. Some of them can be really, really soft and tend not to hold up that great. You catch 1 fish, maybe 2, and all of a sudden you've gone through, a $20 soft plastic. Lots of great custom hand poured ones out there. There's too many to talk about. There's tons and tons that I still would like to try. But these, for me, are proven fish catchers, not just by myself, but by a ton of other anglers out there. Several of them have withstood the test of time, which tells you they are fish catchers. So I'll put links for all of these up in the video description for you. I'm not sure. I think a couple of these Tackle Warehouse doesn't even carry. If they do, I'll put it in there. Otherwise, I'll tag the link to the company. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Grab yourself some swim baits. Go toss them around. Really fun baits to fish, and they give you the chance at catching an absolute giant. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.